Jeff Cuthbert, first of all, why do Welsh hospitals underperform?
Oh, I think we need to be very careful when statements like that are made, because what that does is create a lot of mistrust and indeed fright amongst patients. Patient satisfaction, those who are actually using the NHS in Wales, are very high indeed, showing an over 90% satisfaction rate. So it's not true to say that hospitals are underperforming. There will be incidents from time to time, and of course those are investigated, as is happening at the moment with a couple of hospitals.
Right, there are figures though that I've got here. 50% of Welsh patients wait at least 6 weeks for bowel cancer scans, compared to around 1 to 2% in England. Similarly for MRI scans, and 80% of patients were waiting 6 weeks or longer for urine tests, which can be used to detect bladder cancer. What do you say to those?
Look, I think it's been established quite clearly that you are comparing apples and pears. The issue of waiting times in England is calculated in a different way from waiting times in Wales. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't look at that issue to try and improve matters, but the raw comparison is unfair, and it doesn't produce realistic comparisons, and that's been accepted by the medical profession.
Right, so Andrew Davies, this is just political football, isn't it? We often hear, even in PMQs, look at what's happening in Wales, look at Labour's record in Wales. It's just an easy slogan to bash Labour.
I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, if you look at the big ticket items such as the economy, such as education, such as health, regrettably Wales does lag other parts of the United Kingdom. And it's not because Welsh people aren't aspiring to be the best at everything. It's ultimately the policy direction that the Welsh Labour government has taken in education, in the economy and in health since they took power in 1999.
So surely you're accountable, aren't you, Jeff Cuthbert, you and your colleagues?
Look, let's be clear. Andrew R.T. Davies mentions the economy. The latest figures show that unemployment rate is lower in Wales than in the rest of the UK, and in the crucial area of young people, 16 to 17-year-olds, there's been an over 22% drop in the numbers who are out of work. Lot down to our very successful Jobs Growth Wales scheme, which is creating 10,000 job opportunities. And by the way, as I'm talking to you, the First Minister is in the United States looking to win good contracts for Wales, inward investment, and promoting Wales as a tourist centre.
Right.
So we're doing our best to raise the profile of Wales. It's disappointing that the Leader of the Opposition continues to talk Wales down.
Right, well, Andrew R.T. Davies, what do you say to that? Are you talking Wales down just because it's politically expedient for you?
Far from it. I see huge ambition here in Wales, but the facts speak for themselves. If you look at GVA, which is a measure of the value that people feel, we sadly are on 74% of the GVA of the rest of the UK. The Labour government in '99, when it came into office, set a goal of 90% GVA. If you look at waiting times in the NHS, 1 in 7 people in Wales are on a waiting list. And sadly, the cancer wait times have not been met since 2008, 2009.
All right, well,
and education, but if I could just take this a little further. In education, if you take PISA, which is the internationally recognised standard, regrettably, year on year, we've got poorer in those assessments. That's not because of the people of Wales haven't got the ambition. That's not because the professionals in those areas that I've just talked about haven't got the desire to get on in life. It's because the policy direction that the Welsh Labour government have set and have been responsible for those areas since 1999, when the Assembly came into being.
Right, just hold your fire just one moment, gentlemen. Griff Rhys Jones, how do you think Wales is faring?
Well, I have to speak as somebody who runs 2 businesses in Wales, both of which are run by people who are very dedicated and very good people. So I don't find any sense in which the idea that Wales is not a place where business can thrive has any validity. But also, what's important for Wales is to be aware that, just like any other country, it has priorities about its economy and about its organisation.
And do you think the priorities are right in Wales at the moment?
I think that it's always a wrong thing to stand back and say, we're fine, please don't pick on us because we're Welsh. There's a sense in which actually we ought to be trying to achieve better standards, and I would hope that would be something that is an important thing, because there is a tendency in Wales to think of yourself as to think of Wales as a sort of subject nation or a repressed place or a special case, and that strikes me as very, very negative and not useful.
Why don't you think there is the clamour for independence by a section of the population as there is in Scotland?
Well, I think that possibly Welsh people are too sensible. There's a sense in which if you turn independence movements into a sort of reverse racism, then we have a problem. What's important about any independence is a pride in what is achievable and what has been achieved, and not a sense of we're being hard done by, which is one of the primary factors that drives the strong independence movement.
Right. Jeff Cuthbert, do you agree with that? That is, you know, the attitude. It does come down to attitude. Welsh people shouldn't be seeing themselves as a subject nation. They should be striving more, whoever is in power.
Oh, yes, I agree. I mean, the situation in Wales is different from that in Scotland, and can I make it clear, although it's a matter for the people of Scotland, we hope very much that they don't vote to leave us in Wales by separating from the UK. But yes, the situation, there is no appetite for independence in Wales. And I think Griff Rhys Jones is quite right when he says we don't want special consideration in that sense. We are a proud nation. We want to make sure that our economy is as strong as we can. We've got a lot of work to do. I'd like to make some points, if I may, on the issue of education, which the Leader of the Opposition raised, because we take those matters very, very seriously indeed.
All right, well, we'll come back to that in a moment. Let me ask Andrew Arty-Davies, what about your relationship with the Welsh Secretary, David Jones? How would you describe that?
Well, David and myself work very constructively together. At the end of the day, we are both batting hard for a better Wales. David, obviously, is the most senior Welsh politician in London, sitting in the cabinet, arguing the case for greater investment, such as Wilver in Anglesey, the electrification that's going to be taking place between London and Swansea.
But why don't you agree, then, or you don't agree, do you, on giving or granting Wales tax-bearing powers, which David Jones would like to see?
Well, no, I think you're wrong there. We agree that, you know, with the Silk Commission's recommendations, that there should be an element of devolution on income tax. That is in the government's draft bill that is currently under scrutiny.
So why did you sack 4 members of your team?
No, I think you're talking about a specific measure, which is called the lockstep, rather than the principle about devolving income tax here to Cardiff Bay. It's also about devolving stamp duty and other taxes, so there is greater fiscal responsibility and accountability.
And you don't agree on that, do you?
Well, we're at the draft stage at the moment. We have had a discussion within our group what we would support, but what David and myself are completely united over is making sure that a future government here in Cardiff Bay has an element of fiscal responsibility, because that will create better government and better accountability here in Wales.
Andrew Arty-Davies and Jeff Cuthbert, thank you both very much.